You're listening to FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Victory looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again! Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick from Maria.
Well, as the A-League sides crawl their way over the finish line, one head coach has decided that instead of rainy MacArthur, he'd rather be on the Dalmatian coast. And who on earth can blame him? Ante Milicic has announced that he will depart MacArthur FC at the end of the season due to family reasons and return to his native Croatia. Well, his native. His I guess, lineage, his homeland. Yes. And, you know, the lifestyle he used to lead as a national team assistant coach and scout in that part of the world, I think it feels a lot more glamorous than his current head coaching role. I'm Josh Parrish. I've got Jason Goldsmith here with me on the Oz Football Hour. How are you, Jason?
I'm good, Josh. Good to be here. Yeah, it's an interesting one with Ante. I don't think he got... well, I guess with all the lockdowns and everything else with MacArthur, a really good run at it. And you remember he sort of gave up the Matildas gig to take the MacArthur gig on. But, yeah, family reasons. If you got links back to Croatia and you've earned enough money to have a bit of time off, you know, get a coffee from Mark Viduka's coffee shop and just relax. Why wouldn't you choose that kind of lifestyle choice?
Absolutely. I mean, MacArthur have been a pretty miserable watch this season, and not just because of their disappointing home crowds. They've had players in and out of the side. Danny De Silva disappeared unannounced and then returned with no explanation. They've, again, had a really inconsistent, patchy season where they started the league campaign like a house on fire with all these clean sheets and wins and seemed impossible to score against, and have since regressed badly to the mean and are now sitting just outside the finals places.
They are 1 point out, a couple of games to go. So it feels like we are really limping towards the end of the season. There's 15 games to go in the whole of the A-League men's. Yeah, MacArthur 1 point out of the top six for finals. Probably a good time to announce it, I guess, with there'll be a few coaches looking for roles. And yeah, hopefully he's not lost to Australian football. He did serve a pretty good job there as Ange Postecoglou's assistant and our scout for us in Europe, especially all the Europe-based Australians. So he could do that for the men's or the women's teams quite easily. And being in the same time zone and maybe uncovering a couple of gems like he sort of had a little bit of a hand in last time with doing the likes of Fran Karacic and getting Apo Ianu from Greece and that kind of thing. Look at the Soutars and extra Australian players to actually bring into the national team. So hopefully he's not lost to Australian football just yet.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, given that he already has those national team links and has served multiple roles, I don't think the door will be closed to him returning in some backroom kind of capacity, or, you know, he might pop up at a Croatian club. I wouldn't be shocked by that either.
No, well, isn't Zelko Kalic is coaching in Croatia? I'm sure there's some friendlies there, I'm sure. But what a gig. If he gets paid to watch football, that's something that we should possibly push ourselves towards. Base ourselves in Croatia, watch a few games in the right time zone, none of this setting the alarms to watch the great European leagues.
Yeah, that's the big announcement this week. FNR is relocating to Split. It's been great knowing you guys, but we've decided to catch Ante Milicic.
Good for my 1 hour a week to be based in Croatia. That'd be great. Anyway.
So they're not the only A-League team looking for a new head coach. Perth Glory have cast the net far and wide and have been linked with such luminaries as Sven-Göran Eriksson and Dwight York.
I love this. I love this. So we had a chapter in Lucas and my book, I guess, was all about the rumours of the best rumours of players coming to play for Australian clubs and clearly coaches. We've got that as well now. So, yes. How old's Sven?
74.
74.
I think.
It's time to call it a day. Surely he's earned enough money to relax and unwind. He make back in Sweden and just relax. I'm sure there's some Middle East dollars that could probably get him by. I'm not sure Perth would be the right thing for him. Does he realise he has to fly 4 hours?
I hope he's looked at a map.
Yeah.
His name gets linked with every available job in Asia.
Yep.
So he seems to just want to live out here somewhere, and his agent's probably working overtime, just applying for everything and trying to chat to journalists and get his name in amongst the rumour mill.
I don't want the all-night Dwight approach, because we had that with Robbie Fowler, right? We had a massive name that's never coached really before, or minor leagues in Thailand and things like that. A big name, but as a big name as a player is a difference to a big name as a coach when they're not proven. The one positive thing this year, I think, is that all the coaches in the A-League are Australian. Nick Montgomery's got Australian citizen. I think the rest of them are all Aussies. So hopefully we can continue down that vein, because we're seeing what's happening now with Kevin Muscat, Ange Postecoglou, that are still moving, to greener pastures overseas. So maybe we can continue to push down that direction.
I disagree with the marquee coach model as well, because I don't think people come to see the coach.
No one does, no. Yeah.
I mean, how entertaining can they possibly be strutting up and down the sidelines? Unless it's Diego Simeone, the show is on the field. And unless it's a coach who is famous for playing an incredibly attractive attacking brand of football that people are going to want to watch anyway, the marquee coach makes no sense. And we don't know what kind of football Dwight York favours, or what his what formation does Dwight York want to play? Nobody knows. So, I guess it's hard to get your start. You got to start somewhere, but I don't think the A-League should be a launching pad for a guy just because he used to play here.
No, and we've seen that with players as well, right? So yeah, the same thing. So we've had big name coaches before. We talk about Terry Butcher in the A-League and Puskás in the NSL. So some of them are proven and actually can work well, but I hope they don't go further unproven. Sven-Goran Eriksson's got a fairly decent resume though, mind you. He's 74, but he's done some good things.
I was, and this is like a tangent, but I was going through most successful coaches by win percentage in the A-League, and Terry Butcher was number 8.
Okay.
Which absolutely stunned me, because he was widely mocked as a flop.
Yeah.
But apparently he's one of the top 10 coaches we've ever had in terms of just winning records. So there you go.
There you go.
Maybe it was the fact that he was part of the so-called English mafia and didn't like his type around here.
Start. Yes, that's right. Anyway, we don't want to get down that goes down those. But if we want to stay in Europe, some good news in France. Danny Jonro's League 2 team Toulouse got promoted, so he will be going to the first division. So we have another Australian playing in a top league in Europe, which is what we all hope for. So that's fantastic news.
And he's the 8th Australian to play in Ligue 1?
Yeah, some pretty decent names too. If you want to look, I've got the list here. So the Aussies that have played in the French First Division: Eddie Krenčević, Robbie Slater, Frank Farina, Zlatko, and I'm going to butcher his last name, so Zlatko Arambazic, Ned Zelic, Milej Stojovski, Nicky Carl, and even Ross Aloisi had a game in the late 90s there as well.
Ross Aloisi isn't. I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years, but there you go.
No, Robbie Thompson guessed that on Twitter for me. So his French links has certainly paid off there. So he'd be the 8th. So that's pretty impressive, and the first one in about 15, 16 years, which is also very, very good. Obviously, Danny's got a French heritage, so that makes a difference with him moving over there. But that's fantastic news. We want more Australians successful in Europe.
I think he spent time in France as a child, if I remember correctly. So he's comfortable there, clearly, and is flourishing and starting and playing heaps of minutes. So, I mean, that's fantastic. Obviously, sides look to strengthen and recruit when they go up, so there's no guarantee he won't be replaced. But that's so good to see an Australian finally cracking into one of the top echelon of European leagues. We've seen very few Australians playing in that level.
No, and I think the language barriers probably has pushed it off. But if you have a look at the Aussies that they have played there, they've all come from Belgium. So they've got a chance with the language and a bit of the culture before they moved in. So Eddie Krenčević obviously won a Golden Boot in Belgium and moved there in the late 80s. And Frank Farina the same. He had a couple of stints there. So, and then, and Robbie Slater too. He started in Belgium before he moved to France as well. So that's a path that was taken previously, but it's good to see Danny in there now, and hopefully we get a few more.
Well, with that, I think we'll take a quick break. We've got heaps of A-League action to get into today. A thriller in the F3 Derby, a wonder goal in the Adelaide-Perth match, a comedy goal in the Melbourne Victory-Macarthur game, and a pretty nifty backheel as well to talk about. And we've got Asian Champions League fixtures to talk about as well. So stay with us here on the Oz Football Hour.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Victory looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind top or Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again. Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick from Maria.
Time to get into the good, bad and the ugly from the A-League weekend. I think we'll start with my favourite, the ugly, Josh Belante's goal in the Melbourne Victory Macarthur game that I don't think he saw it. We saw it on TV. His teammates had to point it out to him. He was too busy appealing to the referee for a handball and didn't see the P-roller just about wander its way over the goal line.
It's got to be the slowest ball ever. Absolutely. Even in slow motion, just watching it roll and just completely cross the line. Fantastic.
That's one for Andy Howe. Do we have velocity statistics in the A-League? Is that the slowest shot to ever cross the line?
I wouldn't challenge Andrew. He will come back with something. He will have it for sure. But yeah, amazing. But that wasn't the goal highlight for me watching that game. That was Miranda's little back heel from the corner.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And not the kind of finish you associate with a centre-back either.
No, not at all. But and how many times would he be able to do it again? Like, I'm not saying it wasn't deliberate, but how many times would he be able to do that again?
If he does it when it matters.
Yeah, freaky. Well, so
it was like a Gianfranco Zola impersonation.
It was amazing. It was a good result for the Victory, but they that was when they were calling themselves the benchmark after that, and then they've bookended that win with a couple of draws against Brisbane Roar, which has probably cost them the chance of really having a crack at the Premier's plate, because they've dropped 4 points that they probably should have taken given how Roar have travelled this year.
There was one save from Jordan Holmes at the tail end of that Victory game that may have denied them that silverware. That
amazing.
was such a good stop.
It was amazing. It was one of the few highlights in that game. I tell you what, the weather in the northern part of this country has been horrendous for this season. I watch every game, it's wet. Yeah, and
Melbourne hub, that's all we're saying. We've got the sunshine here.
We don't want a hub. We don't want any more hubs. We had enough of the hubs and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was interesting, but not all wet. And yeah, Victory have pretty much cost themselves, I think, now a chance to really have a crack at it with a couple of games to go.
Western United will play Central Coast Mariners this weekend, which is a really big game for the Premier's plate.
It is. That's probably the game of the round, to be honest. That's I think it's like a mid-afternoon one on Saturday, like 4 o'clock or something. So,
we know the game of the round is whichever game the Cum Dog is involved in. But
how good was the derby? Can we move to that? Or
let's do that. Let's do that now.
All right.
Newcastle Jets 2, Central Coast Mariners 4, a game that ended in red card controversy, Matt Simon getting involved even though he wasn't even playing, which was very on brand. Newcastle almost did it. They almost came back from the dead at 3-0 down. They scored the equaliser and had it cruelly taken away from them thanks to a push in the back. VAR spoiling the party, and then the Mariners sealing the 3 points with Garang Kuol, young Alu Kuol's brother, scoring a marvellous goal off the bench. This game just had everything.
This is the Saturday night stuff that we want, right? And, on free to air, that's the game we want. We want the marquee games, the F3 derby. There was a decent crowd and supporters of both teams. And yeah, they straight out of the blocks, the Mariners 3-0 up after like 34 minutes. Jason Cummings scored, then he gets a penalty, scores again, 3-0 up. How good's this? The Mariners are home. And then within 5 minutes of the second half, it's game on.
It was amazing how quickly it turned.
Yeah. That's the beauty of football, but it did turn so quickly. Own goal against Jacob Farrell, and it's game on all of a sudden.
Well, Jacob Farrell was a hero in this fixture earlier in the season, and he would have been pretty nervous when that third Newcastle goal went in and they had the VAR review thinking, that horrible own goal that he scored as he turned to villain. But it turned out it didn't matter in the end.
Yeah, and a nice little bit of push and shove. Like, it meant a lot, this game. The only thing that annoyed me a tiny bit was the choice of uniforms. Both teams were wearing their second and third kits, right? So if we want to keep pushing this game and this is the free-to-air game, then, maybe we want the traditional colours.
Petty gripes, while we're talking petty gripes.
I saw you tweet on Saturday night about one of those, about the coverage.
After Maresh scored the chip,
yep,
they cut to an ad break, which I hate after you score a goal.
Yeah.
Show as many replays of that thing as possible. If you have to have something popping up on the screen saying, all the rest of the games are on Paramount Plus, guys, head on over. There are plenty of broadcasting examples where you can have banner ads going up and still have the action being replayed. Why you would want to cut away from the fixture at the most exciting point of it, the moment of quality in the game that everyone's going to want to replay and see again on the highlights, and you're showing one replay and then going to an ad break is a nonsensical strategy to me. But the fact that they cut to an ad and it was an ad for Paramount Plus and the A-League just infuriated me, because I'm thinking we're already watching the thing.
Watching it.
This is the advertisement. You don't need to cut to an ad. This Maresh goal, this chip, is what you want to show people to get them to sign up in the first place. And it just shows the people making these decisions don't actually understand what they're selling.
No, because we're preaching to the converted with us and whoever's listening and watching us at the moment.
Of course.
Exactly right. So how are you going to sell it is they're scoring goals. You want a replay of the goals. You want the goal celebrations. You want the crowd jumping up and down. You want the active going to be a little bit mental as well, right? And carrying on. That's what sells it. That's what sells the sport. That's the point of difference. You don't just cut away from it and the rest of it, come back and then show the mundane stuff. Anyway, I actually, with the ACL, watched one of the Champions League highlight package of the Sydney FC game, and their highlight package showcased the substitutions. Now, for me, they're not the highlight of the game, although it was supposed to be quite a boring game. But for 90 minutes, you don't want to know how many subs they made in their little highlights package.
Well, we were giving them props for their highlights earlier, and I suspect that's AFC work, so maybe the blame goes to the AFC as well.
Well, they're watching a lot of football at the moment with the Champions League, so perhaps that has got a little bit too much for them, and they just nodded off for that one.
Maybe the person cutting the highlights was a friend of the fourth official, and they just wanted to see that sub-sport action.
That's right. Doing well. But look, Mariners, fantastic. So they're on the back of going over to New Zealand and spoiling the Phoenix homecoming party. They're entrenched into sixth spot. They've got 3 games to go. So the two Sydney sides, Macarthur and Sydney FC, are behind them on points, but also they've got a game in hand. So
they can do it.
They're in good spot to make the finals, which would be a great story for the coach, the staff and the players. Fantastic effort. I'm cheering very hard for the Mariners. We want them to make it because they're well worth watching. They're good fun.
Well, I wanted the Jets to make it, of course, because they're so fun to watch. They've shot themselves in the foot too many times this season to have a hope.
Yep.
But the Mariners, honestly, have been my second favourite team to watch this season ever since Jason Cummings has come in and given that extra attacking dimension. They already had the foundation in place.
Yep.
They were a bit grim to watch at the start of the season because they just didn't have enough forward players and Maresh was being forced to play centrally. Ever since he's come in, he's changed the equation for them, and they're actually, even though they're a reactive team, I guess, and a counter-attacking team a lot of the time, they're marvellous to watch. They're very, very entertaining, and I would love to see them in the finals, and I think they will be there.
That's exactly, and more Jason Cummings on TV, the better, especially coming into the Socceroos calculations. Like we laughed about it at the start, and we keep saying it. We want to cap the cum dog. We want him in there.
It's not a joke anymore.
Because he's actually, his link play is fantastic as well, right? Not just he's not a fox in the box just scoring like we've got the strikers in the national team at the moment, right? He's the guy that's linking up and going to help. I watched the game in New Zealand, and Jason Pine summed up the Mariners quite fun, were very fun. And I've missed Piney's commentary in the New Zealand games when he said, the Mariners came over and ruined our homecoming party. Not only did they ruin it, they kicked over the stereo and they drank all the craft beer. So a nice little take on that. But it was great to see the Mariners get in some form.
Is there an argument to suggest that Sky Sport New Zealand puts on a better show than Paramount and Channel 10 do? I really enjoyed the production value of the whole thing. I guess it's easier when you're only preparing for 2 games. But
two games with big crowds and atmosphere and the rest of it. It's been pretty handy. So they had 15,000 at Auckland last week. And then the Phoenix are back here. We just had a look at the fixture. So the remaining games are back in Australia. So
I do want to talk about the Knicks, but before we move on from this F3 derby, Garang Kuol, what a goal and what a story. I mean, the Mariners obviously gave Alu a chance when nobody down in Melbourne would, and that's been well covered. The Victory youth coach telling him he was too raw, which it's just a line that lives rent free in my head. Like, how can a youth coach whose job it is to take talent and make it into professional footballers can say, "Oh, you're so talented, but I'm just not talented enough to coach you."
Yeah, I can't like get the best out of you.
That's just an admission of defeat, and that line to me actually speaks to, I guess, an unconscious bias and ingrained racism in football against players of African descent, to be honest, because they're often labelled with those sorts of tags about being, they've got all the ingredients, but they're just not team players, or they don't work hard enough or whatever. And I think some of these are lazy stereotypes that coaches need to break themselves out of.
Correct. And that's international. That's just not here.
No, that's not Australia.
Yeah,
that's not unique to Australia at all. But talking about Garang, I mean, I saw this kid 2 years ago when I did the African Nations Cup broadcast for the first time. And unfortunately, South Sudan's team that year got knocked out pretty early, but he was just tearing it up, nutmegging players twice his size. And I was thinking, oh, wow, who's this guy? And then I heard the surname and I've immediately connected to his brother at GV Suns and then the Mariners. And there's more coming.
I was going to say, isn't there a younger brother that's supposed to be better?
Well, there's Teng, who was playing Victory Youth last season. I'm not sure where he's at now. And then Diddy, who's still 12 years old or something.
Well, so he's the next big thing. We just want to put any pressure on him.
But according to Alu, in his own words, in the Shepparton News article that I share every single time it's topical because it's the best interview I've ever read with an Australian footballer, Diddy is going to be the best one of the lot. So we can't wait for the next Kuol to break out.
It's exciting. It is exciting. It was fantastic. You want to see that. You want to see that youth, that excitement, and those goals. That's what makes it worthwhile. Sitting through some nil-all draws,
drudgery
in the A-League.
And believe us, we've had some drudgery this season, so we're going to take this and cling to it.
Absolutely.
And we'll get into another African player who scored a worldie in a moment. But Knicks, Mark Rudan playing the pantomime villain to perfection, getting sent off, giving us a little bow. He's very self-aware about the role that he plays.
Especially with the Phoenix too, I guess. What did he say? What do you reckon he said?
Oh, I don't know. You're welcome.
I don't know.
I built this team,
Maybe the comeback could have been, you had your chance to equalise. You had a very good chance to equalise and... They
hit the crossbar twice, Western Sydney.
Yes.
Ugarkovic took one of the worst penalties we've ever seen in any match.
Like, I've watched that on replay. Like, the poor guy slipped right just before concontact, right? Just
it's
before.
the John Terry in the Champions League final.
The ball didn't bobble, though. He slipped.
No.
He lied on his back. He wanted the whole ground to swallow himself up. And in one of the few big crowds that he would have played in front of this season as well. So... it was a fitting result for Mark Rudan, I thought, just for his little brief homecoming there for the Phoenix.
It was a good game from an atmosphere perspective. The quality was mixed, I would say.
Well, I was talking off air. Like, I'm not sure. 15,000 and it's not their home city, which is amazing, which goes to show that New Zealand have been robbed of high level sport for a long time. And there might be a market there for another New Zealand team if they really want to do it properly. I mean, you know, I don't want to say fish where the fish are, but you know what I mean? Like it's
Fush where the fush are.
yeah, something like that. But it's a decent crowd. It's great. How good's big crowds, you know? It's not that hard to...
But I mean, before we go there, I think it'd be good to see whether that kind of novelty value and excitement holds up over an entire season, because the fact that they're back in town and they haven't seen them for so long is going to boost the crowd, because everyone's going to want to be there.
Yep.
Whether when they're playing at home every 2 weeks, that's the same. I'm not sure. But, you know, it's still great for the league.
Just one thing further on New Zealand football too. So they've lined up a friendly before their World Cup playoff match. Against Peru. So Peru is going to play against New Zealand in a few days, lining up before their playoff with Costa Rica, which means Peru are basically planning to play Australia if we beat the UAE. And I'm not sure about the mentality about this when it comes to geography, that some countries will say, oh, we want to play that country because there'll be a similar style just based on their location. And do New Zealand play the same as the Socceroos? Like that's the mentality. Like when we're going to play Denmark, so we'll play Norway or Sweden in a friendly beforehand, because the Scandinavians must all play the same.
It's weirdly reductive thinking, isn't it?
No, it's really strange to me. But
you
anyway,
see it all the time.
Yeah, constantly. So, but anyway, New Zealand have locked in a friendly with Peru leading into their World Cup playoff, and Peru leading into their World Cup playoff, whether it's against us or UAE. But anyway, that's an interesting tidbit.
Other A-League action from the weekend, I want to talk about, well, only one aspect of the Adelaide-Perth Glory game. Perth rolling out the young brigade again, and they've pretty much put their feet up and said, no, we're not contesting the rest of the season. But Nestori Irankunda, again, scoring another worldie. We don't see many glimpses of him, but whenever he plays, he seems to score an absolute banger. And this one was no exception, just driven into the top left corner with so much power. It was just arrowed. And he's just so fun to watch. He's just building a reputation for himself as someone who only scores bangers.
His third goal for the season, and they're all amazing. All three of them are fantastic. 11 games, 16 years old. He's 16 years old. Like, this is, again, awesome. This is the exciting part of watching the A-League men's, you know, with these kids, you know, Qual, and this goal, Irankunda, it's fantastic. Bernardo scored the first one as well. So young kids, Adelaide giving a go with the kids. Easy to do against Perth, I guess, given where Perth are. But just amazing to watch.
I do wish Carl Vart would lean into it more. So often we see the Isaias one-day axis, which is
safety
tough
first.
to watch.
Yeah, safety first.
And we see so few glimpses of these guys off the bench, whereas the starting teams are often more conservative. Yes, they've put a lot of stock in Bernardo this season, but signing of Ibasuki to replace Cassini Yengi up front seems to suggest the thing they valued about Cassini Yengi was his size, when that's not what I enjoy about Cassini Yengi. I think he's a player who likes to turn a face goal and take responsibility on. He's not just an aerial threat. And they've signed this target man who conditions their play to a certain extent. It's like when they used to pick Peter Crouch for England, and then all the players started playing long balls.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, because, you know, Craig Goodwin's in the form of his life at the moment for Adelaide United. He's absolutely smashing it. And how good would he be linking up with these kids? And they're going to make the finals. Adelaide are fourth. They don't look like they're going to miss out. They're fairly entrenched on the ladder. So hopefully, if you are fourth on the ladder, you're still fairly low in the pecking order. You need to throw something up in the finals to try and have a bit of an impact. And the unknown quantity of these kids getting more minutes would actually be more beneficial for them to have a real crack at it, really.
Interesting with the ownership stuff with Adelaide at the moment, with Ross Peligra reported to be taking over the club from the Dutch ownership. Well,
who knows who that is? We don't know who owns them, do we?
I think there must be some Chinese involvement because of that club in China, and there was association with, and they sent a couple of players down who never really played. That mysterious ownership group might be cashing in and moving on. So we'll see how that affects Adelaide's strategy going forward. But they seem to have the best pipeline of young players available to them in the country, with South Australia producing so many good teenage, particularly wide players, attacking players.
Is it a good pipeline, or is it just good development and coaching from their setup at Adelaide? I think so, because I think Sydney clearly would, and Brisbane and Melbourne and the rest of the country would have this young talent. It's just, I think, being developed better. I think so.
It's interesting because I actually see a lot of Adelaide young players coming across to Victoria as well in the NPL ranks. So I think there's something to do with the emphasis at grassroots level there that's different. And also, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, the massive African-Australian community in Adelaide seems to be producing a lot of good young talent. And even if you look at African-Australian youngsters in NPL Victoria, a lot of the time you go back on their CV and they started out in Adelaide. They were born or grew up in Adelaide. So there's something different about South Australia in that regard, and it might just be due to the demographics.
Possibly, I again, or development, because the same talent would be here in Melbourne as an example, but basketball and Australian rules football are taking a lot of that talent away as well. So
it's
maybe
cultural as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, hopefully the more the merrier. We want these players. They've been fantastic.
So I'm calling on Carl Vart to
play the kids.
Play Iran Kunda because he gives us the highlight every time, and it's just incredible for a player so young to have this many big moments to his name already in such limited minutes. He scored incredible goal against the Mariners, that fantastic free kick on his debut, and now this goal against Perth Glory. His highlight reel is growing, and for a club whose business model is based on flogging these young players to overseas clubs for a profit, can only be good for business as well.
And I think he might do that and back himself to do it. And the fact that they're giving him a free kick to start off with as a 16-year-old is pretty amazing, right? So, and they have done that, but I think it needs to be a bit of an X factor in the finals. Otherwise, other teams are going to play it safe, and they're going to do something to try and have a crack.
Yeah, 100%. This final structure is different this year as well. We've got two-legged semi-finals, so you've got the third to sixth one-off games with the high-seeded teams playing at home. And then the semi-finals are two-legged affairs. So
to qualify for the
grand final. So I guess you could argue there's more of an advantage to finishing in the top two this season, and also maybe less chance of that kind of upset team coming from below second place, because when you play two games, you're more likely to have the better team win.
The balance come through.
Having said that, when Melbourne City inevitably come up against Western United or Melbourne Victory, they've had their number this season. So I'm not totally convinced that Melbourne City are nailed on favourites for this. It seems pretty wide open to me.
We'll see. Well, they've got a couple of games when they come back from the Asian Champions League. Adelaide at fourth at the moment gives them a home final, and they're going to be very, very hard to beat at home. As it stands, they'll be playing Wellington if we look where it is, or the Mariners and stuff like that. So actually, Adelaide versus the Mariners at Cooper Stadium would be a very, very tidy game. It would be really good to watch.
Well, I think we're going to talk Asian Champions League on the other side of this break, so stay with us for that.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Lee.
to FNR, Football Nation Radio.
And they're dead! Roma have risen from their ruins! Nonetheless, the Greek god in Rome! The unthinkable unfolds before our eyes!
You are listening to FNR Football Nation Radio.
Messi shot! There is nothing at all that any team in the world can do about that. More than 90 minutes of resistance, more than resistance from Iran. But there is a world-class player on the opposing team, and his name is Lionel Messi.
FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Victory looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again! Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
Well, I'm not sure how many Melbourne Victory fans were watching Yokohama F Marinos 3, Sydney FC 0, but I suspect if they were watching, they would have been supporting Kevin Muscat's Japanese team as they rolled Sydney for the second time in successive matches to leave the Sky Blues bottom of the group with only 2 points behind the Vietnamese team with the very difficult to pronounce name. Let's call them Jalai on a goal difference. Sydney FC failing to register a win from their first 4 group matches, including that match against Jalai, which I thought was a golden opportunity gone begging and a pretty poor performance. Jason, what have you made of Sydney's Asian Champions League campaign to date?
Yeah, not very much. It was interesting watching Kevin Muscat. They were 2-0 up in the first 10 minutes, and he wasn't really even celebrating. It was like, I've just got to get over this game and get it over and done with, and we'll knock them over and move on to the next stage. Like, it was very nonchalant in how he went about it. So, they were well behind it, 2-0 down after 10 minutes, and even with a red card to one of the Yokohama players, it didn't make much difference. So I think their Asian aspirations are gone for this season, and they won't be there next season, given how they're travelling in the A-League. So, unfortunately, it's over for Sydney FC.
Yeah, just making up the numbers, it felt like. I was encouraged when they got a 0-0 draw against John Book in the first game. I thought, this is a group of death, but maybe they can muster something here. And since then, it's been all downhill. And they were just so vulnerable against Jalai in transition. It was so predictable, passing the ball around in these big U shapes, never getting anywhere, and leaving themselves really open on the counter-attack. You just think the naivety with which Steve Corica are approaching these matches suggests that Sydney FC have learned nothing from previous campaigns, which is really disappointing.
It is, and they're going to finish 4th, which means their results don't actually even matter too, because the Chinese team's out. Remember, the 4th place teams.
So they're not even making up the numbers.
They're not even making up the numbers. They're just actually scratch from the record, because the 4th place team doesn't matter. So goal differences and wins and that kind of thing, which is going to help Melbourne City with their goal difference when they come into the last couple of games. The next game. But yeah, it's a disappointing campaign. Like we keep saying, we want the Australian teams to be successful in this tournament because we want to promote our league, and they're the representatives of our league. So I thought Melbourne Victory did well with their chance to get in there. So did a really good job. With Sydney, not so much. We have to pin our hopes on Melbourne City, who didn't look very convincing the other night in their draw with
John Dragons. Yes. Yeah, well, Sydney FC with a campaign so poor it could be stricken from the record books. We'll see how they go in their last 2 group games and if they can indeed make up the numbers. But Melbourne City blowing the chance to go top of the group and through comfortably, conceding a 92nd minute goal against John Dragons. Tom Glover's punch going awry and presenting them with an opportunity to equalise. They thought they'd done it. Jamie McLaren scoring in the 89th minute, but the K2 side with the sucker punch at the end. Not the first time we've seen Tom Glover cost City points this season.
No, not the first time in the last couple of weeks either, actually. So, it might be a confidence thing. It's a bit disappointing. So, need to look at something there for Tommy Glover. You'd want him now at this level to be just nailing those and not being shaky or nervy. You know, he should grab the thing.
For me, it's getting to the point where I'm thinking, is this just who Tom Glover is? And you just sort of assume that he's one of the best goalkeepers because he's come through with the Ollie Roos and everything, and he's one of the best of his age group. I'm not actually convinced that that's true. I've had question marks about him from day one, from the way he set up his walls on set pieces to how he comes out for crosses to how he uses his feet as a goalkeeper and the decisions he makes with his distribution.
Yeah.
His handling. Like, yes, he can stop a shot, clearly. Clearly he's got, the physical tools to be a good goalkeeper, and he's made some amazing saves, at full stretch. But with everything around that, I see myriad shortcomings in his game, and I'm just not entirely convinced that he's good enough to be Melbourne City's first choice goalkeeper, a team that has bigger aspirations than just challenging for the A-League title every season. They want to be successful in Asia.
They do. It's quite amazing. You think that Birighitti didn't get a minute when he was on Melbourne City's books a season or two ago, really. We're given his form in the A-League and probably should be in the Socceroos squad. Yeah, it's tough because Melbourne City are in if Melbourne City win their next group game, they're probably going to top the group. They're going to top Group G in the Asian Champions League. They're on top of the A-League. How can you be really sort of critical and complain? But some of those errors that have cost them points are basic stuff that you want a goalkeeper to do. It's interesting to see that Paul Izzo is coming out of contract. He, if you recall, followed Popper to Xanthi in the Greek second division. He's probably better than the Greek second division, to be honest, what he was performing in the A-League, so that maybe he get a chance coming back with one of the Aussie clubs.
Yeah, also there's the Heward Bell Redmayne situation at Sydney FC as well, and obviously Redmayne's been at Hart/City before, so they might be tempted to spring for him if Sydney decide Heward Bell is the future.
Sydney were going to do a big clean out. They need to do a big clean out of the old fellas coming to the end of the season, and Redmayne might be part of that.
He's out of contract.
Yeah, he might be part of that, so be interesting to see. But yeah, the Glover mistake, well, he'll get another shot at it the next game, which is the big game for Melbourne City in the Champions League. They take on BG Pathum United, who are on top, 2 points clear of Melbourne City. So Melbourne City need to win to top the group. A draw or a loss, they'll probably still finish second, and there's still a very good chance of progressing through. But not every second place team in the group goes through.
I've seen a few people on Twitter and so forth complaining about our coefficient and why are we below teams from, Vietnam and Thailand now. I think it's spot on, to be honest, from what I've seen. I mean, BG Pathum probably should have beaten Melbourne City. They had the chances to win in the first group game. We'll see what happens in the return fixture. And Jalai snatching the draw with Sydney FC, they could argue they had better chances to win the game even if they had far less possession. So, to be honest, this is where we're at. This is a reality check every time. We had a year off from this sort of existentialism when A-League teams withdrew from the competition, and that, of course, affected the coefficient even more. So that's an artificial thing. But we've already lost an automatic place. We could be in danger of losing a full place entirely and only having 2 spots available if this keeps going on.
I think there's still that mentality that when we moved into Asia, we're bigger and stronger and faster. We're going to boss all these teams around. And even Graham Arnold even said that to some of the lesson in the last Asians Cup, right? We'll boss them around and we're going to dominate on the park and this kind of stuff. It doesn't happen. We're not good enough, and our teams haven't performed that well in this competition. So hopefully Melbourne City can get the 3 points and progress. So that's like prime time. That's a 9 p.m. game on the Eastern Seaboard, so it's worth watching and seeing how we go tomorrow night.
It was interesting, that July game, to see the Vietnamese national team players play and how they fared against A-League opposition, because there's been a few thought bubbles. I've been chief among them, I guess, floated that maybe a Melbourne club should sign a Vietnamese player just to engage that sizable community here, given it's a stone's throw from Amy Park. And I've had a few people come back at me and say, oh, they're not good enough or and what have you. I don't think that's true.
No,
I mean,
it's not.
look
It's
at
not.
Kong Fong, for example, the captain in the middle of the park for July. If you saw him play, he was fantastic. He dominated against Sydney FC. Every time he got the ball, he was slipperier and more skillful than all of the players around him, or managed to find space. It didn't matter that he's smaller and gets dominated physically because you couldn't get near him. And the same thing happens when the Socceroos face Vietnam and Quang Hai plays. He's probably got higher aspirations in the A-League at this point. I think, a J-League side could conceivably spring for him. But I just think there are various dinosaur mentalities out there among where we're actually at in regards to how we shake up against Southeast Asian opposition.
Well, the whole 3+1 with the import rule that we never embraced, every time we get to this competition, we're going, we should have had it, then we could have had, an Asian import in the Australian teams in this competition. It was never embraced. It was just ridiculous because we needed to do that. If that had happened, 5-6 years ago, then we would be natural evolution. We would have all these players from Southeast Asia coming, or even West Asia coming into the competition and making a difference and making it better and making it more well known. We need to look after our region. So, yeah. Well, interesting to see. We'll be following City tomorrow night, and hopefully they can get the points. But BG Pathum United, as Ryan said last week, have been the team to beat with home support and all the rest of it. It's been really good to watch. There'll be atmosphere too in this game, so it'll be great to actually see. So
if you haven't really checked in with the Asian Champions League season, this is probably the time to do so. The matches are on 10 Play and Paramount Plus, and that one kicks off tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a crucial match for the makeup of the group, and City need to show what they're made of in this game. Yeah, they were interesting. They've rotated the squad quite heavily. So
lots of games in a short space of time. Six games in 17 days. So they have rotated the squad quite heavily. They said in the last game, Jamie McLaren hadn't touched it until the 89th minute and scored the goal. Well, that's J-Mac for you. Well, of course it is. He's still going to bob up and do that. I thought, watching some of the early games, I thought Andrew Naboot was going to boss the tournament, just the way he sort of, with his pace, where you can turn it on and cross the ball in, but he seemed to go missing and get his back to his normal frustrated self with the linesman and the ref and all the rest of it. So, yes, there's two games to go for City, 2 games to go for Sydney as well, to finish off these group stages. So we want to be barracking very hard to make sure that we've got representation in the next round. 100%. A few other tidbits to go through before we sign off for the evening. One of which, Keanu Bacchus being linked heavily with a move to St Mirren in Scotland. Yes. Another Aussie moving into a European league, which is obviously gets me excited, which is good. Keanu's how many games has he played? He's played over 100 games. Yeah, he's been around for a long time now. He's not a young player anymore, and he's been linked with so many different moves from Denmark and all these different clubs have apparently wanted him. The Wanderers have held out, and I don't know if he's out of contract or not, but. Yeah, he's apparently signed a pre-contract with St Mirren, which suggests that they'll miss out on the fee for him, which is a shame. But still, it's good to see a player go over to Europe with as much first-team experience under his belt as Bacchus has. That's right. I mean, he was at the Olympics last year, so he's just turned 23. But 100 games in the A-League. So that's the grounding we kind of want, I guess. It's similar to Aaron Moy, that kind of thing in terms of giving it a crack. I'm surprised that South Africa haven't come calling for him or his brother at some stage as well, given he was born in South Africa. But it's a great move for Australian football. We want to see the best of these kids. That's what gets us excited. And when they have a resume that's worth getting a gig overseas, it also makes a difference too. So, 23, he'll be expected to start and actually contribute. It will no more developing for him. He's now would be considered the finished product at that age. And it adds to the growing contingent of Aussie players in Scotland with a couple of Hearts boys, and of course, we've seen Martin Boyle over there, which. Aussie boys, well, whatever. Plays for the Socceroos, will count him. Tong Rogic and now Bacchus seemingly on his way to St Mirren. So good move for him. Other movements at Western Sydney, and I'm just seeing this break during the show, but apparently Ian Crook
is moving on from the Western Sydney Wanderers Academy,
Yep.
which is a pretty significant departure. If people remember him from his Sydney FC, ill-fated Sydney FC coaching days, he really made a name for himself and flourished as a junior coach.
Yep.
And has been behind a lot of the Western Sydney Wanderers Academy players breaking into the first team or finding their feet at other A-League clubs. And he's sort of the brains behind the operation. So that's a pretty significant shake-up. I don't know if it's his choice to leave and he's got another offer, or whether, this is part of the restructure at Western Sydney.
We can speculate who's looking for a new coach next season.
Perth Glory.
Perth Glory are, and Perth Glory are currently playing lots of kids, potentially, and they're doing a bit of a shake-up there. So there's an option there, I guess. And if he wants to move down the road, MacArthur are looking for a new coach next year as well. But
Sure.
Yes, I wouldn't think he would move back into a senior role at this stage, would you, given what he's done with development?
I could see the logic in Perth hiring him for that reason, saying we've got this brigade of young players that we want to play next season and we need a coach who's good with kids to play them and to develop them. But, he's had his chances at a senior gig. So, I saw a few people saying Kenny Lowe should come back.
That's 10 years ago, though. His Sydney FC gig's 10 years ago.
That's true.
He's probably got a decent, and he's put a decent body of work together since then. And maybe if I was Perth Glory, I'd be looking at the Adelaide United model at the moment, because Perth also has a fairly decent football culture there and a lot of good youth development, and someone that can just sort of tap that potential might make a difference, similar to what we're seeing with Adelaide.
So the rumour doing the rounds is that Crook has actually been sacked and Jean-Paul Demarigny is taking over. That's only a rumour.
Okay.
It's a Twitter rumour. Take it with a grain of salt. That, to me, is a puzzling move, because I don't think the reason that Wanderers have struggled have been a lack of available young players to come into the first team. It's been a failure of recruitment and
all the older guys they've got,
and a failure of senior coaching. So and an insistence on big name players as opposed to any overarching strategy and vision, and just entrusting everything to the senior coach rather than having a director of football.
To Carl Robinson, that's why I'm wearing my Whitecaps shirt today. So
he developed Alfonso Davies.
He
will mention it in every interview. Thank you very much.
Did.
So I that's puzzling to me if that is true. But given that it lines up with Ian Crook's personal announcement that he's leaving, it's a worrying sign for the new Wanderers era, in my view.
It'll be interesting, actually, and because we've had to ram all the games in coming up in the next sort of, to get to the finish line again for the second season in a row. We don't really know when the next A-League season's starting. There'll be a big gap for the World Cup as well, so that'll interrupt our season, given we're in Qatar. So people I guess these clubs are going to start scrambling and getting ready for 2022-23 already. So, it won't be that far away, really.
We won't have the drought, the long off season that we're used to.
No, not one game a week like we did have leading into Christmas. But it'll be a big festival of football. But I guess so. I'm sure he won't be. He'll be snapped up pretty soon by someone.
You'd imagine so. Jason, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for watching along or listening on the podcast. We'll be back next week. Until then, it is goodbye for now.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Top or Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses